Hello everyone and welcome to LE5. Let's get started. LE5 will have you build a responsive program that has a UI thread and a data entry thread. The UI thread is responsible for asking the user to get input, and the data entry thread is responsible for writing that entry to a file. You'll notice in the data entry thread, we have a little lag that's introduced in the write to file function, so that if you perform all of the actions correctly, then you'll have a responsive program. If you don't, then you might have a pretty laggy program. And yeah, here we go. Okay, so we are going to be given a target file name and column headers at the start of the program. This is going to give you everything that you need to set up to create the file. And then we'll ask to continuously prompt the user for data in each shell. This is very similar to PA2, where you continuously ask the user for input. Once we get an exit, the main thread should push to a bounded buffer and signal that to stop the data entry thread. Again, this should seem familiar to you with PA3. Okay, so we're given some starter code. We have data entry.cpp, which is really the only function that you'll need to modify. I guess you'll need to use your bounded buffer, but that should already be done. Oh. So, like I said, you'll need to bring your own bounded buffer from PA3. This should already be done by this time, but if you need help, please see one of us and we'll help you get started on bounded buffer. For the data entry program, you'll notice that we have our two thread functions that you'll need to fill out. Let me just make that smaller. In your main, we've already given you the get out, so it should it parses the column names for you into this column names vector and collects the file name again for you. Here, before you start creating the threads, you can go ahead and create your file. So you could go ahead here and open your file, write the column names to it, and close your file. Let's add that as a comment. Of F name is column headers of call names. And this to do, you'll need to create an instance of your UI and your data thread. So this you should be familiar with this from PA3 again. Using these two thread functions. And then we start to join stuff. So you'll join the UI thread first. Once the UI thread is joined, you'll know that there's no more data that's going to be in the bounded buffer. Well, there's no more new data coming into the bounded buffer. So we can go ahead and push a stop signal to the user through or to the data thread. And you can do that here in your push to your bounded buffer. Once everything is processed in the data thread, it should join and then clean anything up. Let's not have memory leaks. Let's go into the main functions. So the UI thread function will act as a producer to your bounded buffer, BB. And the data thread function will act as a consumer to your bounded buffer, BB. This UI thread function should have an infinite loop. And it just should continuously as the prompt user for input. If the input is exit, break, else push input onto B. Fairly straightforward. The data thread function acts as a consumer to BB, so it will, in an infinite loop, again, pop from BB if the signal, if it's the exit signal, or really more of the exit packet, break. And this can be as simple as having it just compare to exit. That's easy enough. Else, call write to file. Let's take a look at our helper functions. So parse column name, all it does is parse. It's a split function pretty much. And write to file opens a file stream, then writes the file. Simple enough. It opens in append mode if it's not the first input. And so when you're, that's a good point. When you're writing to the file, for the first time, when you're creating the column headers, you can set this first input to 1, and that makes sure that it opens in truncate, so it won't append to the file. Pretty much so it has a clean file to work with for the first time. So that's what you'll want to do is write into the file here, set first input to 1. At all other times, you can set first input to 0. Let's see if there's anything else in the presentation that I need to talk about. Bounded buffer, again, use your own bounded buffer. Resources for lab, I think PA3 is pretty applicable in this lab. And LE4 is threading implementation. So these are simple threads, but they do use join in separate places. And ask questions in Teams and office hours. You should be good to go. Thank you very much.